Welcome to Leaders and Legends, the podcast focused on leadership and clinical trial execution. I'm your host, Patty Lushton, CEO of Diligent Pharma. In each episode, we'll get to know the individuals who are driving change and influencing the direction of our industry. Whether you're a seasoned executive yourself, an emerging leader, or simply passionate about clinical trials like I am, join us as we discuss our industry's most pressing challenges, the future of clinical trials, and hear insights and advice from the leaders who are moving our industry forward. Kathy, thank you so much for being on the podcast.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me.
So we're going to cover a lot of ground today. I want to talk about your entrepreneurial journey and all the interesting roles you've had in our industry, but I'd like to start with Spark Clinical Research. And so can you talk about Spark a little bit and the niche that your company fills?
Yeah, sure. I started Spark Clinical Research, I guess going on almost 2 years ago in July of 2024 with a team of people that I've worked with for a lot of years in the industry. And really, we've been together for a long time and we all share the same perspective that clinical research is very complex and having the right people involved at the right time makes a huge difference in both quality and efficiency. And so that's really what Spark is founded on. We're founded on resourcing. We have a huge network of experienced clinical research professionals that we've built over many years across the US, the Americas, Europe, other regions, covering just about every functional area in clinical development. So when our clients, which are sponsors and CROs, need support on a study, we focus on aligning the right people who have the right expertise and they're in the right locations that they need. And then we also help with some foundational pieces, things like clinical SOPs. And then we partner with service providers when we need technology, special tools, or other services. And our goal is really just to be a flexible partner that helps our organizations run strong and efficient studies and making the most of their research dollars.
Yeah, that's great. So you work with all types, all size organizations in the pharma space, big
Yeah,
pharma,
everything.
small biotech.
Yeah, I say everything from huge pharma all the way down to rinky dink ink and everything in between.
Rinky dinking, I like
So
that.
a lot of CROs too, so partners.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Well, we'll come back to Spark, but I kind of want to go back in time a little bit and
Okay.
just talk about just how you started. Where'd you grow up? How'd you get
Oh
into the
boy.
industry? Why don't we
Yeah,
start there?
sure. So I grew up outside Chicago, and I say I grew up in my dad's pharmacy. He was an entrepreneur, had his own independent pharmacy, and went to school. But honestly, watching him run the pharmacy, working nights, weekends, holidays, getting calls in the middle of the night from people who needed their medicine urgently, I really didn't want anything to do with his business. So
Mm,
as I went into school, I actually got a business degree. Coming out of school, all of my interviews were my dad's pharma connections. So I landed
I
at
see.
McKesson Drug Company, which was my first job as a drug rep, and then moved to North Carolina. My husband's job brought us here in the early 90s and applied to a blind ad in a newspaper for a pharmaceutical type analyst job and landed in the CRO industry. I didn't really know it existed until then.
Wow. Well, that's a common story on this podcast of just sort of finding ourselves in the
Right.
clinical space. But what's interesting is you didn't want to have anything to do with running a pharmacy, but yet you really got into the whole entrepreneurial world of
Yeah, and
business
I think
building and
growing up
starting
in
a
a
company.
absolutely. I think growing up in a family business, I really did see that the hard work and the drive, really pays off, and I think I really deep down always wanted to do that. So, here I am.
Yeah, but it sounds like you saw that it was somewhat stressful for
Oh,
your father.
absolutely stressful. Yeah,
Yeah.
we'd go on vacation and he'd be stressing out about this pharmacy. So, it's
Yeah.
just, it's do what you got to do as an independent business owner, right?
Well, I'm just thinking about my early days of starting my first company when I had little kids. And of
Hmm.
course, starting a business, it's always stressful, especially if you're bootstrapping it and, you're trying to land your first client. And it occurred to me, I wonder how that lands on the family members. I
Yeah,
tried to
right. It's
keep
very
everything
stressful. Yeah,
Yeah,
and
I tried to keep everything separate, to be honest,
and
I
when you're
compartmentalized, but, it had to seep in somehow.
Absolutely. When you're starting up a business, it feels very selfish, right? Like it's all consuming, right? And I don't have kids like you have kids, but a husband definitely. And
Yeah.
it's really hard. It consumes your life, especially in
It
startup.
it is all consuming. That's a very, apt way to put it. And so you really started in the CRO industry sort of in the mid-90s. Is
That's
that
right.
right?
Yep. Yep. That's right.
Yeah, and I'm thinking back, I was, in the mid-90s working at PPD. I had a career in the CRO world before starting Avoca in 1999, and I do like to reminisce about those early days of the CRO world, late '80s, early '90s.
hmm
It was in some ways a different world. Some things haven't changed, but how would you characterize that, the CRO, working in a CRO, almost 30 years ago now?
Well, almost 30 years ago, we really were a startup industry, right? So, not a lot of people to teach us. And I think those of us that were in the industry that long ago really built the foundational blocks of the industry, if that makes any sense. But again, nobody to teach me. I had to figure it out. I had to
Yeah,
develop my very first, Excel spreadsheet to develop budgets. But then, a lot of the things are still the same. Remember the file rooms full of paper and how you
absolutely.
filled the
Yeah,
back of a truck with all of the CRFs and you put tape on the back of the truck, right? So that you could, you know, have control, that there was a control there. I mean, I think that's still the same challenge. You have to have, everything regulatory and all the controls in place, and chain of custody has to be assured and all of that. So, very different, but a lot the same. We built a good foundation, and I think it's, definitely a mature industry now.
yeah. I mean, it's interesting because there have been so many obviously technological advances. And when you think back to the day to day, like I was a CRA in the late
Mhm.
90s using sort of the sticky notes for
Yep.
when going out to the study sites, and yeah, and going to look in file cabinets when I needed to review something. And so, fast forward, it's a very different world, but there were some foundational skills that I think were developed back then. We all had to be somewhat scrappy because there weren't playbooks
Right.
for things. So
But the
it's
tools that have been developed have been great, making us more efficient, hopefully moving, medicines and things that can help people forward faster. So, I'm all
yes.
for the progression.
Absolutely. What was that first position, that you had? What
So
were
I
you
was a
doing?
business analyst in a startup CRO, and
Huh.
I did proposals, contracts, project finance, kind of all of those behind the scenes business tasks that need to be done. And back when you had to put books together, print out proposals and put them in binders and get
Yes,
them to
yes, yes.
FedEx at the airport by 10 o'clock. So,
Oh my gosh, this
eh,
is like walking down memory lane because that's what I did at Besselar, which became, of course, Covance and Fortrea, and but yeah, being in the sort of proposal world, I actually love that because it gave me a line of sight to every aspect of the clinical trial process,
yeah,
essentially,
I completely
because
agree. Because doing proposals, we had to understand enough to be able to write
everything.
about it and to
Yes.
budget the tasks, right? So I had to know very detailed, information about every single aspect of clinical research. I also interacted with everybody in the organization, right? So proposals
Right,
is
I
is
remember
really,
that. It's an
the
important
face
job.
forward. Yeah.
Yeah,
So I think it's a
yeah.
great jumping off place.
Did you I know I had a great mentor back then. I was, early in my career, and I worked for Jeff McMullen, who kind of went on to become the I don't know if
Uh-huh.
met Jeff, but he
Yeah.
went on to become the CEO of PharmaNet, and we've stayed friends for many, many years. But he and Dr. Besselar really kind of taught me the ropes, and they had such a high standard for quality. And so I feel like I learned so much. And I think when you're young in your career, that's so important. And was that your experience as well? Or were you just
Yeah,
sort of thrown
I
to the
actually
wolves a
was
little
really
bit?
lucky to have, a lot of good mentors in my career. I remember I made a really huge mistake and went running to the CEO, and I was just a little proposal writer, right? So, but
Yeah.
I mean, I was terrified that I made this huge mistake, and he helped me through it, and it was a really good mentor. And I've had some bad bosses along the way too, and I think I'm a product of all of those bosses combined, the good ones and the bad ones.
Yeah.
I think they
It's
teach you what to do and then what not to do, right?
100%. And, well, same. I mean, if you've been in the industry for over 30 years, you've met a lot of people, you've had
Right?
a lot of bosses, but you do learn as much from the difficult situations as the great mentors. And I think, I know we have sort of younger professionals that sometimes tune in to this podcast because sometimes I hear from people. And so I don't know. I think that the mentality of just learning and grabbing as much as you can every step of the way of your career journey is it's just, so important because like you said, it sort of forms who you are as a leader. And it's just part of the journey.
Absolutely.
I want to talk about the first company you started, which was back in 2013. And
Mhm.
so, what was the catalyst for you
So, I was
co-founding a company?
Well, I knew well in advance that my position was going to be ending, and I had some options, right? I had a few months to figure out what I wanted to do. And again, in the back of my mind, I think I always knew I wanted to start something myself and have something for myself. And it was timing. And there were people that I could have as partners that to support me, right? So I felt like I wasn't going on the journey alone. And,
Right.
I think if you wait for the perfect time, there's never going to be a perfect time, right? So I guess in my career, this was about as good as it was going to get. So
Mhm.
off I went. I founded Inno Clinical Outcomes in 2013 with three partners. And we founded a good company, and I was there for about a year and a half. And, we were just at a place where we just needed to go our separate ways. So after that, I exited that organization and went back into a bigger CRO for a while. So till I got bored and needed to do something like for myself again. So
Yeah, I think once you have a taste of that, it's it is kind of difficult then to just work in a traditional situation. But well, did you say three partners or four partners? How many
there were
of
four of us all together.
Okay.
So
So that in and of itself had to be difficult. Just there's so many decisions that need to be made, right?
yeah.
So how did you get to like a meeting of the minds with, four partners?
In some cases we didn't come to a meeting of the
Mm,
minds, right? So, but you have people have strengths, people have weaknesses, and they're different, right? So, I really think you need to understand where they're coming from, prioritize, don't be afraid to, stand your ground when you need to and give when you need to. It's hard with partners. You're in a startup situation. Everybody's, it's their bread and butter, right?
yeah.
They're putting food on their table, and if my decisions or my priorities aren't the same as, their priorities, it's really hard.
Yeah.
Some partnerships don't last long, some last a lifetime, right? So,
Right, right. Yeah. The stakes are so high and like you said, you know, everybody has their own world that they're trying to navigate, but yet you have to come together as leaders when you're running an organization. And yeah, when I started, I think that I was so concerned that in the very beginning that things wouldn't take off that I didn't want to put anybody else in that situation. I almost
yeah.
felt like, okay, I'm going to take this on and, if it doesn't work, then I'm gonna sort of figure something else out. But I yeah, I kind of felt like I wanted to to go solo, and I did for 20 years, 20
Yeah.
plus years. And sometimes that's difficult, and then other times it's actually easier to not have to navigate the decision making that's required in a partnership situation.
Yeah, but you learn and grow through that too, right? So I know that I know for sure that I did. So it made me better this time around. So
Yeah,
yeah.
so I wonder, like, when you look back on those early days, or even through the career that you've had, is there anything that you could honestly say you would have done differently, or a move that you made, it was like, dang, I shouldn't have done that?
Um, Not really. I kind of think where you came from is who you are today, right? And if you hadn't worked through, things that you worked through, both good and bad, I don't think I would have been ready to do it again. And so I don't think so. I think I would keep it the
Yeah,
same.
I think that's pretty
How about
cool
you?
that um my answer would be similar as well, because I went through some challenging times, especially in the early days of starting my first company, because it wasn't like I set out to start an organization. I was kind of in a very challenging situation, where I had three little kids, a newborn. Um, I was in a job situation where it really wasn't working out to work for that company and to have a family.
Mhm.
And you know, I started a company like during a tough time, and during that moment I thought, what am I doing? Is this the right move? Is this the right thing to do? I remember being kind of fearful, like, okay, well, what if I can't get a job after, if
Mhm.
this doesn't work? And so there were certainly moments where at the time I questioned my decisions. But now, of course, you have the benefit of, being able to look back, and everything sort of kind of fit into place in a way. And we've talked about this on this podcast before. I had a great conversation a while back with Deirdre Brevard, and she was talking about how your career journey isn't a straight line. It moves in different ways, and
Absolutely.
it's I think it's the decisions that one makes need to be based on what's right for you at the time, essentially. And there's always a way to pivot if you're in a situation that isn't right in the moment. But in terms of starting and co-founding a business, is that something you would recommend to people? Like, what advice would you give someone thinking about starting their own
I think
company?
if you really wanna do it, I think you just gotta do it. There's like I said, there's really not ever gonna be a perfect time, right? Like, you had 3 kids and a family, and, would you have ever dreamed of starting a business in that scenario? I think you just if you've got it in your system, you've just gotta do it.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I think that you know, sometimes you get into analysis paralysis around things
Mhm.
like this too, and sometimes you just have to trust your gut. But you've had so many different career sort of
Yeah.
situations, and I'm just wondering about, we talk a lot about leadership on this podcast, and I had the pleasure of having a conversation over 2 episodes with a leadership and negotiation expert, Ken Hyatt. So, I've sort of have been steeped in that lately, and I'm just wondering how you think about leadership, and if you feel like your leadership style has changed or evolved over the years.
Um I think it has to. As you grow in the responsibility, that first management position you have, typically you get because you're pretty good at a specific skill set, right? A specific task, a specific job. So you get promoted into a management position and you're good at that. I think I really remember the time when I first had to blindly have faith in my employees, that I couldn't
Mm,
check everything they're doing. And, that was a really big step, I do remember, in my management style that really led me to truly trying to empower my people, trust them, communicate with them, make them understand that everybody makes mistakes. You know, let just let me know about it, let me help you fix it. So I think that really changed my approach with people.
mhm.
And I think learning how to manage up as well as manage down was critical too. So I think that all of those things have kind of driven like what is my leadership style now, which is really just trust people. Your people are the most important thing. Your employees, your customers, everybody around you, your most important people. Respect them,
Yeah.
trust them, help them, let them help you when you need it.
Yeah, absolutely. I have found that when I have sort of stepped back a little bit from, taking on so much, it allows others to sort of step into their
Hmm.
leadership. But it is sometimes not an easy thing to do. Um, I want to talk a little bit about this sort of transition that you mentioned of getting sort of going through the usual career progression of moving into management roles. And with the work you're even doing at Spark, I'm sure, you're dealing with a lot of different types of talent and resources. I kind of feel like people often don't get the training on how to, actually be adept at management. It's sort of like, you're really a great biostatistician, right? And you're
Hmm.
hitting it out of the park. So then you get promoted. Now you have a team of 10 people where all of a sudden there's a different dimension to the role. But how often do people actually get the proper training and mentoring to be good managers? I don't know. I haven't seen it much, but I'm wondering
I think that's why
what
I'm a
your
product
experience
of
is.
all of the leaders that I was, fortunate enough to work for, both good and not so good, right? So I think you form your own style from that. But I mean, I don't know about you, but I've been to management seminar after management seminar, and they're, informative, but are they really helpful in your style? I'm not so sure they are.
Mm. It's more the hands-on sort
It's
of just diving in and learning and being curious and wanting. I think that having a desire to be the best that you can be as a leader is sort of fundamental, right? Because
Yeah,
then
yeah,
that
kind of go
sparks
learn.
curiosity and
Right. I
yeah.
kind of call it learn through what you go through, right? So, if you hadn't have gone through some scenario 10 years ago in your career, you wouldn't know what to do now. So, I,
Yeah.
so that's just I think that's how you, that's how you learn.
Yeah. So let's talk about today and the clinical trial space and just what you're observing or experiencing. Now, you work with so many different types of clients with Spark. And where do you see the biggest challenges right now in our
I mean, the
industry?
industry today is facing a lot of challenges, I got to say. There's the funding has been challenging in the biotech space lately. We're very regulated industry, and we are very susceptible to the ebbs and flows of our government too and decisions. So, you could look at, for example, that, some of the NIH grants and funding that was cut has really put a lot of strain on a lot of our sites. And I think
Yes.
our sites are really now looking to the industry to kind of make up that gap where they were getting, grant money for some of the infrastructure people that they had. So, I know we're seeing costs escalate there. We're saying, things change as far as priorities in research. It's ever there's just ebbs and flows, things impacting us from every side. I don't know, was I crazy to start a business in this environment of the industry? I think so, and then I think not, right? Again, there's never a
Yeah.
good time. So
Right.
if you're going to do it, just do it.
I mean, it does require, leaders to be extremely adaptable and flexible, because it's not a static situation by any means. It's so dynamic, and there are factors out of our control, like you said, with government changes, and there's so many ripple effects that
Mhm.
happen. And I wonder, I mean, just with the regulatory changes, is that actually for you, does that create opportunity in a way for
Absolutely.
Spark? Like,
It's challenge, yeah, but challenge creates opportunity. Absolutely. And we're seeing a lot of our customers are coming to us because they're looking for more cost-effective solutions as costs rise in the industry. So for me, that's absolute opportunity.
yeah. And what about just technology? And of course, everybody is talking about use of AI. To be honest, I think that
Hmm.
some companies are challenged with actually executing on their AI strategy. But how has that impacted Spark and the work you're doing?
I think it's making us more efficient, but at the same time, making us check the work carefully, right? So
Mm,
trust but verify, so to speak. And AI is not perfect. AI is, you look at when we first put computers in place, right? So everybody's like, oh, they're going to do away with all the jobs. No, it didn't do away with all the jobs, right? It made us more efficient. So AI, I think, is
right.
there to make us
It's a
more efficient.
tool.
It's a tool.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I'm the
Yeah.
first to say that I use it. I've loved to play with it, and I argue with it all the time. So,
Yeah. Well,
yeah.
it's been interesting running a tech business because we have a whole tech team, and they're now to bring ideas to fruition with leveraging modern tech tools. It's a whole new world, and it's pretty exciting, and it's moving very, very quickly. And I'm actually really enjoying being part
Mhm,
of this whole evolution, because we're constantly looking at, okay, how can we support our clients to drive efficiency and
mhm,
scalability. um, but I think that what we see on the client side is that there is sometimes it's kind of like a reticence to fully adopt external sort of tech innovation, because there's extra vetting, there's concern there, and it's valid, but it's not like the industry has taken 3 steps forward very, very quickly in terms of completely embracing all that is available now with you know tech enablement and clinical trial execution. I think
absolutely.
that there's still some sluggishness. I wonder if you see that. I
I
mean, we
absolutely
sort of
do.
see it on our
Yeah,
our end.
look at how long it took EDC to take hold, right? What, 10, 15 years, something like that? It took forever for, some of the remote monitoring tools to, and risk-based monitoring. And
Totally.
I think we could almost thank COVID in a way for, forcing us to adopt some of those tools that allowed us to keep pushing research forward at a time when we couldn't go to sites, and, we really had to embrace a lot of those tools and technology. I think that was a good learning point in the industry. And now I'm kind of struggling with what are our tools for, making us more efficient versus just tools for toys, right? So, and what's really needed, like what's really driving efficiency and what's just, shiny new things.
Yeah, and there's so many new companies popping up because it's easier to
Mhm.
to develop these things. So, they're I think the one thing that that we feel really strongly about is that you absolutely have to be grounded in the expertise, in we're a quality and compliance organization that just happens to have a great tech platform, but we're first and foremost um, specialists or experts. And
Absolutely.
and I think that and we've seen it just with some of the smaller organizations that kind of just see an opportunity because, oh, there's a lot of money in the pharma clinical trial space, and software engineers kind of pop up a new some new offering. And we have been in the situation of saying, like, dude, you can't do that because there's such a thing as regulations, right? So,
Hmm.
I think we're going to see a lot of change and a lot of innovation. And I think it's great because, especially when there is outside influences coming in, sometimes we tend to be an echo chamber in our world of clinical trials. But I think that the vetting of the new tools is required, but there has to be a great balance because there also has to be a little bit of courage for companies to take on some new things and to step into that, kind of in the name of progress.
Yeah,
So
unfortunately, there's people like us that really do embrace the change and embrace the innovation. So I really hope it continues. I'm all for it. We've got to find ways to get drugs to market faster, cheaper, right? So
yeah,
anything we can do, and going back to the foundation of my company is putting the right expertise in place at the right time, right? So that's
yeah.
that's really important, in my opinion.
I agree. So I have two final questions. And it's really, we talked about the past and we talked about the present. What about the future? What are you excited or looking forward to from a professional
I'm
standpoint?
just excited to see where the company goes and where research goes. Again, I really want to see we help make people's lives better, right? So the more that we can do to help with that human condition, that's important to me. That's why I love this industry so much, and I
Yeah,
just want to see it continue and get it to the market as cheap as, but not cheap as possible, but as efficiently as
right.
possible and safe and effective as possible.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a lot of work to be done there in the sake of supporting patients and I agree. And then what about from a personal standpoint? What are you excited about down in North Carolina?
It's
what
spring, it's
what
a
do you
beautiful day, it's a Friday afternoon. I think I'm just excited to be outside and have some fun and relax. So
Yeah,
that's really it.
great.
So
Well, Kathy, thank you so much for being part of the
thanks for having
podcast
me.
and
This has been fun. I really appreciate it.
I've enjoyed our conversation. Thank you. Have a great weekend.
You too.